What if the goal of modern healthcare isn't to make you well, but to keep you just sick enough to need a monthly prescription? This investigative documentary exposes how pharmaceutical giants, insurance carriers, and healthcare conglomerates shifted from finding definitive cures to building a multi-trillion-dollar software-as-a-service model for the human body. From daily statins and biologics to the lifelong boom of GLP-1 weight loss injections, discover the financial mechanics behind why chronic disease management generates billions, while non-patentable lifestyle cures and root cause solutions are left out of clinical practice. In 2018, a Goldman Sachs biotechnology analyst named Salveen Richter released a report that sent an unsettling shiver through the global financial and medical communities. Titled The Genome Revolution, the Equity Research report posed a surprisingly candid question to prospective investors. Is curing patients a sustainable business model? To illustrate the predicament, the analysts pointed to Gilead Sciences, a pharmaceutical innovator that developed a revolutionary high-efficacy treatment for hepatitis C. Gilead's one-time curative therapy achieved cure rates exceeding 90%. The result for public health was a monumental victory. The result for Gilead's long-term recurring revenue, however, was a catastrophic decline in sales as the pool of infected patients rapidly shrank. The financial report concluded that while one-time curative therapies deliver immense value to society, they represent a fundamental challenge for biotechnology developers seeking predictable, long-term cash flows. This clinical paradox forms the ideological engine of the modern medical-industrial complex. The systemic financial incentive to favor perpetual disease management over one-time therapeutic cures or aggressive, preventive lifestyle interventions. To understand how healthcare transformed into a perpetual subscription engine, one must first look at the stark disparity in economic return on investment, ROI, between acute intervention and chronic maintenance. In a purely market-driven paradigm, a cure is a financial dead end. It is a single, non-recurring transaction. Conversely, a maintenance medication operates like a software-as-a-service (SaaS) business model. When a patient is prescribed a daily statin for hyperlipidemia, a long-term biologic for an autoimmune condition, or a GLP-1 receptor agonist for metabolic dysfunction, they are not merely receiving treatment, they are effectively entering into a lifelong, high-margin monthly subscription. The financial math for pharmaceutical boardrooms is irrefutable. A one-time cure priced at $50,000 might generate an impressive upfront windfall, but a daily therapy priced at $500 per month yields $6,000 annually. Compounded over 40 years of a patient's lifespan, that single chronic case represents $240,000 in customer lifetime value. Multiply that figure across millions of aging individuals, and the recurring subscription model becomes the undisputed holy grail of pharmaceutical asset management. The structural pivot toward chronic management is further illuminated by the meteoric rise of GLP-1 receptor agonists like semaglutide and tirzepatide. These compounds represent a landmark medical breakthrough for obesity and type 2 diabetes management, demonstrating unprecedented effectiveness in weight reduction and glycemic control. Yet, their financial and clinical implementation underscores the subscription paradigm in its purest form. Clinical trials consistently indicate that when patients discontinue GLP-1 therapy, the vast majority regain a significant portion of their lost weight and experience a rebound in cardiometabolic risk factors. The medical consensus, echoed by pharmaceutical manufacturers, is that these drugs are designed for lifelong administration. Consequently, Wall Street valuations for GLP-1 developers have soared into the hundreds of billions of dollars, precisely because the market recognizes the immense financial power of a therapy that patients cannot stop taking without reversing their health gains. Rather than addressing the root agricultural, dietary, and environmental drivers of global metabolic disease, the economic apparatus treats metabolic dysfunction as an infinite, high-margin subscriber base. This financial dynamic creates a structural blind spot when it comes to preventive lifestyle interventions and low-cost therapeutic alternatives. Simple, evidence-based lifestyle modifications, such as dietary restructuring, structured resistance training, circadian alignment, and stress reduction, have consistently demonstrated profound efficacy in reversing early-stage metabolic syndrome, fatty liver disease, and type 2 diabetes. However, lifestyle interventions possess an insurmountable economic flaw within the medical-industrial complex. They cannot be patented. An intellectual property barrier cannot be erected around whole food, physical activity, or adequate sleep. Without the protection of exclusivity, no private enterprise will invest the hundreds of millions of dollars required to fund large-scale, double-blind randomized controlled trials to market exercise as a prescribed medical intervention. Consequently, medical literature, physician training, and clinical guidelines remain overwhelmingly dominated by patentable chemical entities, while lifestyle medicine is routinely relegated to a secondary, idealistic footnote in clinical practice. The downstream consequences of this subscription mentality extend deep into the realm of medical research and development capital allocation. Venture capital firms and pharmaceutical research divisions operate within strict fiduciary duties to maximize risk-adjusted financial returns for their limited partners and shareholders. When evaluating prospective drug candidates, investment committees evaluate clinical trial costs, patent lifespans, regulatory hurdles, and projected revenue streams. A drug candidate that promises to eradicate an infectious disease or permanently edit out a genetic defect carries high upfront development risk with a rapidly diminishing market size upon success. In contrast, a drug candidate that safely suppresses a symptom just enough to require daily dosing, without causing fatal side effects, represents an extraordinarily attractive low-risk annuity. As a result, global capital allocation naturally flows toward molecular targets that promise perpetual symptom management, while early-stage exploratory research into definitive curative mechanisms frequently struggles to secure funding. The friction between subscription economics and true clinical outcomes is further amplified by the deep integration of pharmaceutical influence across the medical education and practice pipeline. Medical schools, continuing medical education, CME, programs, professional societies, and clinical practice guideline panels receive significant funding from drug manufacturers. This financial ecosystem shapes the very definition of disease and health. Over recent decades, clinical diagnostic thresholds for conditions like hypertension, high cholesterol, and prediabetes have been progressively lowered. While proponents argue that lower thresholds allow for earlier preventive care, critics point out that each subtle adjustment in diagnostic guidelines instantly converts millions of previously asymptomatic, healthy individuals into lifelong medical consumers. Once labeled with a chronic diagnosis, the path of least resistance within a time-constrained healthcare system is almost always an electronic prescription, rather than an intensive, coaching-based lifestyle intervention that requires hours of patient education and behavioral modification. Furthermore, the structure of modern insurance reimbursement reinforces the subscription ecosystem while penalizing true preventive care. Insurance companies operate on short-term horizons, as the average insured individual changes health plans every few years due to employment transitions or plan restructuring. Because an insurer may only hold a policyholder's contract for 3 to 5 years, they have little financial incentive to cover expensive, intensive lifestyle intervention programs or high upfront cost curative therapies whose health dividends pay out decades down the line. It is far more palatable for a health plan's quarterly balance sheet to pay $100 a month for a maintenance drug today, passing those costs onto employers and individuals via premiums, than to invest thousands of dollars today in comprehensive, root-cause health restoration. The system is structurally designed to defer the ultimate bill of chronic disease to government programs like Medicare once the patient reaches retirement age. The human cost of this subscription framework is a population that is simultaneously over-medicated and undercured. Modern society lives longer with chronic illness than at any point in human history, yet the quality of those added years is increasingly defined by polypharmacy, chronic side effects, and perpetual dependency on healthcare infrastructure. Patients find themselves caught in a cascade of interventions, where one drug creates side effects that necessitate a second medication, which in turn alters metabolic markers that justify a third. This medicalization of everyday physiology turns human bodies into perpetual cash flow assets for an industry whose primary metric of success is quarterly revenue growth. The system is not inherently evil or conspiratorial. Rather, it is a perfectly aligned economic machine delivering the exact results it was designed to produce. When financial incentives reward the volume of treatments administered and the duration of drug regimens prescribed, the market will inevitably prioritize lifetime management over definitive resolution. Realigning the medical-industrial complex so that true health outcomes override subscription economics requires a fundamental overhaul of incentive structures. Reforming patent laws, incentivizing outcome-based reimbursement models, creating public interest research funds dedicated to non-patentable lifestyle interventions, and re-evaluating the financial ties between industry and clinical guideline bodies are critical steps toward a sustainable model. Until healthcare systems realign financial rewards with the permanent eradication of disease and the robust restoration of human metabolic health, the fundamental conflict will persist. The ultimate measure of a compassionate and advanced medical system should not be how many chronic patients it can comfortably maintain on a lifelong drug regimen, but how many people it can successfully empower to live vibrant, healthy lives entirely independent of the pharmacy counter. Think this story was shocking? The deeper you dig, the darker it gets. Watch our investigative series exposing the rise and collapse of powerful political empires. Hit subscribe to Corrupt Roots and tell us in the comments, what hidden trail of corruption should we uncover next?